in regards to government getting involved in industry. I mean, you have the Liberals announcing about 595 million over the next 5 years for journalists, for media, funding for them. Basically, it's in response to the crisis of newspapers, right? The fact that there are fewer subscriptions, it's more expensive,
media, mainstream media,
and
in general.
it's difficult to pay journalists. I can imagine what your thoughts are right off the bat, but what were you thinking when you first heard this?
Well, my first thoughts are like the government buying out more media, taking the CBC problem to the next step to kind of bias journalism.
They pay $1 billion to the CBC in tax money already.
Yeah.
It's another $600 million over 5 years
on
to
the board,
to other media,
to all sorts of media. I assume it probably even applies. I guess it probably doesn't apply to the CBC as well. But there's all sorts of implications tied to it. Like the government says they're gonna develop a board of journalists and people in the news media to decide which institutions are trusted to receive these benefits, which is curious. And then on top of that, there's a tax credit almost allowing certain media companies to act as charities as long as they provide their media for free, which I think is actually an interesting change, because it is kind of frustrating to have certain, like Globe and Mail is probably most annoying. They have the best firewall. Like they have the best. They can keep going incognito doesn't surpass their security system. So they're the most annoying for keeping me out.
Oh, totally.
Without paying them. So getting that kind of content for free would be nice, but if they have to sacrifice any sort of journalistic integrity and be maybe not as critical of the government, that's definitely not a good trade for Canadians. And another thing that people have been pointing to a lot is the leader of the union Unifor, who represents a number of industries. He was in both cases because they represent the GM workers and they represent the journalists, which I thought was really weird. When I was reading these, I was like, wait, what? I just heard about this guy, Jerry Diaz. And they have openly endorsed the Liberals and criticized Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives. So it's
conflict of interest.
If that's any representative of the journalist of the organization of journalists that they choose to select what's a trusted news site, then that just sounds like a massive incentive to dull down journalism. And it's an unsustainable solution. It's back to this corporate welfare solution that just props up these companies that are failing because they're not competing effectively in the marketplace. And it's infuriating. Like if you look at some of these, they say they're having trouble with the digital age, and it's. But the solution isn't just to like throw money at the problem, right? They have to become better. They have to like fail and improve. That's how the marketplace works. If you look at some of the most major news pages on like Twitter or something, they have zero traction.
Yeah.
Like literally our tweets get more traction than them. Like they have this absolutely nonsense article about some random problem no one's ever even thought about, and it gets like 2 likes and 3 retweets or something like this. Like people do not like they need to stop producing such unnecessary content and focus on producing this critical.
The thing that bugged me was that point about they're going to create a panel to decide what is a trusted news source, because it's not to say that the groups that they're going to end up funding won't create bad content, won't create good news, but the problem is there won't be as much of a diversity of viewpoints represented, because they're going to go with the standard types of stories and types of opinions that don't ruffle too many feathers. What you need in a country, in a democracy, is you need a really robust press. Opinions. You need opinions from all kinds of positions, from left wing, right wing, from the fringes. If you don't have that, I think that then you just get people who want to prop up the party that's in power. Yeah.
That reminds me of something really ironic I saw in the article, on one of the articles that I read. Yeah. There was a quote from Bill Morneau saying, "We need to support an independent media." And I just thought that was so ironic.
Yeah.
Like, you're literally
It's not. Yeah. How can it be independent if
it's government supported?
Funded by the government.
Like it seems like a total oxymoronic statement. Like the government needs to support.
Now the journalist's job will depend on the politicians. If you upset the politicians, they could take away your funding and you wouldn't have a job, right? I think there's some free market solutions of a sort, freer market, like tax incentives. So for instance, there was an idea floated around tax incentives for subscriptions, right? So if you buy a subscription to a newspaper, could you get a tax credit? There was, so it was, ideas, enhancing ideas like that, so that more people use their money to support.
So it was that news organizations that offer their content for free are able to act as.
Well, that's one idea, but there was another. I think there was another idea floated that's not floated by the Liberals that somebody else just mentioned around the consumer, like incentivizing consumers to make a choice, but
that's not dissimilar to what's going on in this.
Well, what would need to happen is that the sources that people choose need to float to the top, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
But offering, what they're doing is offering news organizations that produce their content, release their content for free, to act as sort of charities and be able to provide tax receipts, which is a sort of corporate welfare as well, because it's literally tax funding that. So it's an interesting. I like it more as a standalone than this huge slush fund, because it does encourage, it encourages people to buy more of their own media. But the thing is, it looks like it'll only be provided to these trusted media sources again. So it sounds great. It sounds like, hey, can we do that? Can people donate to us and get tax receivability because we provide our content online for free? But I have reservations that we would qualify as a trusted news source.
Well, I would like to say True North News is pretty trusted, but I'm not sure if the government would. Actually, that's a great
TNN,
question.
CBC?
For everyone watching with us right now, just comment below real quick. What is the most trusted news source that, and honestly, you don't have to say True North News, but what are some of the news sources that you consider to be the most trusted? Just comment below. Personally, I do read some of the CBC online articles, but Globe and Mail, National Post, I read a lot of National Post.
I like the National Post, the Financial Post.
I see some CTV stuff. I mean, I remember watching Evan Solomon's show when he was on CBC. Now he's on CTV.
Global News is pretty good.
Global
sometimes.
can do some good stuff. But I really don't think you can continue, just like you say, it's unsustainable to continue to just pump taxpayer money into this industry if it's a dying medium, and if they need to adapt to the digital age in a new way. They need to innovate, basically.
And this is where I'm going to plug the PPC and Maxime Bernier, because he always has been very critical on corporate welfare and has advocated openly about dismantling these kind of systems, and it overlaps with both of these situations. There's this kind of unsustainable solutions,
and you've seen and I think you've seen Andrew Scheer be critical of this as well. That whenever these crises come up and it's about a changing marketplace and a changing economy, if the government immediately jumps to let's cut a check, you're in trouble, because again, it's going to be a temporary fix.